Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly classic title. I'm the staff writer Jesse Billington, and I'm joined by editor David Simister.
Hello.
And managing editor James Sadlier.
Greetings, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Gentlemen, how are we? And importantly, how are the classics?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm having a good week. Need to do a bit more playing around with the MX-5. The roads in the Lake District are beckoning. There is a packed Drive It Day meeting at Dale Main just outside Penrith, and I think it's crying out for a spot for me to park my MX-5 up out in the grounds this year. So that would be a really good opportunity for me to get out, show my car off and drive it day, and sample some lovely Cumbrian roads in the process.
Oh, beautiful stuff. James, anything happening on your side?
Just on that note, we're getting an extra 4 or 5 minutes a day of extra sunlight. Those longer days are coming for...
And warmer minutes as well.
Exactly, yeah. Well, last week in the podcast, I spoke about replacing my seats, and I found someone with, for my Volkswagen, 1992 Volkswagen Polo, I found some, funny enough, the GT Coupe had the same interior as mine. So there's nothing to really differentiate between the two. They fit the same way. They're almost the same. They're exactly the same seats, essentially. So I was a bit unsure whether I could fit them myself. But the guy, well, it's actually a breaker's yard, but they pull the cars apart, and they've offered to put the seats and door card in for me. I haven't worked out a price yet, but I'm hoping I can negotiate some kind of deal. It means I'll have to buy the full interior and then maybe cart that interior home and store it in the shed, and then maybe sell the car with a full extra interior.
You're going to do your best Mike Brewer and haggle hard.
I think so.
A good deal.
Yeah, I think so, because at some point I'm going to want to sell the Polo on, maybe buy something else, and I don't want to kind of end up spending the same amount of what the car's worth just to fit the interior. But it just means that the seats are at the moment, which is almost disintegrated, the driver's seat, as well as the door card, which is, now pancake flat. It just means it's just one less little job to do, and it kind of keeps it almost feeling a bit more fresher and newer. Interestingly, the rest of the interior looks brand new, because I just don't think anyone sat in it and used it apart from the driver's seat. So for a 30-year-old car, well, it's more than that now, but yeah, 33-year-old car, it's in great condition. But
yeah, it must be knocking on 5 years since we snapped it up for Classic Car Weekly, and it's still going strong. Yeah. Which just shows that these kind of more modern 90s classics, they are really good, fun little cars that can actually provide really actually reliable service if you look after them.
Yeah, and definitely. And I drove it to Devon just this last weekend, and the MPG I get out of it's fantastic, really. As long as I keep it under 60 and cruise along and just let everyone overtake me, I'm all good.
What numbers are you getting from it, out of curiosity?
Oh, I must be knocking on kind of, I'd say 40 to 45 miles per gallon. I think it's very good.
That's not bad, really. Yeah.
I mean, don't quote me on that, because I've not actually measured it exactly, but that's what I'm guessing.
So you're not as dull as me keeping a giant spreadsheet with full MPGs for Jimny and Midget.
I know I'm playing fuel roulette on the way back from our offices in Peterborough today, because my round trip from which I do between Southport and our offices in Peterborough is 350 miles, and I put a little bit too not enough petrol in last night when I filled it up, and I worked it out. My range is 348 miles, so I could be either just cruising back or filling up, or pushing my car up to somewhere through Lancashire later on.
So it's pump the tyres up before you leave, and really light right foot, I think, is going to be the trick.
I love a good fuel economy run. So
there is something quite fun about doing it. I always enjoy doing it myself, but at the same time, I often end up doing it because I'm so terrible at remembering to put petrol in my cars, or overestimating their ability at driving on sort of the lowest amount of petrol possible.
I think I might be Classic Car Weekly's fuel economy champion. We had, you remember, James, the Mercedes S-Class that we had, the S280, which had a straight six, struggling beneath the bonnet, basically turning fuel into noise, and most of the people who took it out were struggling to get sort of mid-teens on it. I took it out 29 miles to the gallon.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive. Clearly the most daintiest foot of all of us.
The lightest of feet.
Yes, because I know the MG returns on a solid run about 36 to the gallon according to the spreadsheet. The
Midget,
Jimny's-
that's pretty impressive.
That's not too bad for two SUs sucking away. I think the Jimny does about 35 to 38. Really depends on how lightly I've been running it. And I know the Mustang does 12 religiously. However you drive it, it just does 12 to the gallon. All the petrol just becomes a V8 noise and a lot of tires.
But what a noise! That's the thing. That's
noise,
the great
yeah.
thing with the '60s Mustang.
Yeah, and thankfully the Jimny is soon to be back on the road as well. Actually, I spent a
Brilliant.
bit of last weekend reinstalling much of the interior after finally getting the old blown heat matrix out. Got a new one in, got the new lines in, new clips onto the sort of lines running from the engine block into the matrix, and reinstalling the dashboard. So that's all coming back together, and thankfully in the workshop it's now just about warm enough I can work in there for several hours on end and still feel my fingers. That is the best part of sort of spring hurriedly arriving. I think meteorologically speaking, spring actually arrives this weekend. So if you're listening to this on the spring solstice, hello. And enjoy the warmer weather if you're listening to this in the future. We'll move on from our classics to actually last weekend again, and well, I was off at Race Retro, which was a brilliant brace of days out for me. Actually, it was plenty to see in the halls and more still on the live stage. You can actually see in the background new graphics.
Yeah,
behind us.
that is a very lovely Mark 1 S-Course, and
Very lovely
and a
and
very
very
nice,
sideways.
very nice Mark slidey start to our podcast backgrounds, which is really good. I was having a chat with the Race Retro Show director actually on the phone this morning, and she was telling me that it feels certainly from the feedback that she's had that Race Retro is probably at the best it's been since before the pandemic. I mean, it's had a couple of sort of ups and downs in the past. Last year in particularly, obviously it didn't go ahead at all because the venue was underwater. But I'm guessing, Jesse, you were boating to this year's event. You drove in and saw a good event.
Yeah, drove in and had a very good event. I spent most of the Friday. They don't have the rally stage running. Everything was indoors, which was great. I had a chance to sort of properly spend time going around all the halls. I was there from literally the time it opened until they were sort of making the announcements for everyone to leave, which was great. I was just sort of captivated by everything that was on display. There was a beautiful display of Group B rally cars celebrating the brilliant heritage and engineering that goes into those, as well as the people that sort of keep them alive on the classic scene. On top of that, they had their Pride of the Paddock, which is sort of their motorsports twist on Pride of Ownership Awards. We see it at the Restoration Show and at the NEC in the November. That had some beautiful cars in it as well, including Nigel Mansell's old Formula Ford car, which had been recently restored back to its original green livery and looked fantastic. And of course, there was all other bits and pieces like the MG Special, which had been all over the news. A great lineup of Formula One cars coming from sort of Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust, a couple of private owners, all bringing together cars to have everything from, I think it was a Racing Point RP19, so 2019 car, right the way back to, I think it was a 1976 Penske was the oldest one there, and a lot of the older cars running the DFV engines, still competitive on the historic racing scene as well. So a brilliant spread of cars on display, plus all the other halls with sort of dealerships, traders, all with something interesting sort of parked out in front of them, and something brilliant on display too, plus iconic auctioneers there with their auction, which had some really stunning cars in them, all way beyond my price range. And mostly because I blew my price range while going around the auto jumble. I bought some bits and pieces for the MG, yes.
Oh, what did you buy from the auto jumble?
Just some
Obviously, things you needed, or are they things you wanted?
things I half needed, half wanted. Sort of frontages for the carburetor, just to sort of open it up, let it breathe a bit better, and a nice sort of gauze filter for the front of it. So it just should give
All
a bit
helpful
more,
things to keep the car running healthier.
bit more performance. Not necessarily health, but performance. But yeah, it'll give a bit more of a rorty induction noise as well as the end game. But yeah, it was a fantastic little trip.
I'm just having a look through some of the auction results as we speak, and there's some. The one that seems to have grabbed most of the attention is the ProDrive P25, which sold for upwards of £500,000, which is
I did see that.
a huge amount for what is essentially, I mean, obviously what's originated as a Subaru Impreza, which just shows just how strong the market is for these, particularly rally homologated 90s and noughties classics. But I mean, there's just looking here, there's a tall Sunbeam Lotus, £58,500, which is a huge amount of money for a Sunbeam Lotus. Again, another one, the Rover Mini 30, the electric one that's given to Chris Rea.
Engineered one, wasn't it?
Chris, a Mini reputedly inspired the song "Driving Home for Christmas," which I'm not going to regale you with a karaoke cover of right now, but the Mini
inspired it.
Well, it was a very similar black Mini 1000, but this is one that BMW created, kitted out. It's a Resto mod that's all electric, sold for just under 26,000, which is again not a bad result at all. But there's some really astonishing results here, and it just shows. Actually, we've talked before about some of the prices in the auction, sort of in the early parts of this year, and some of the results from here actually are really encouraging. I think it shows positive things for the UK market.
There's a lot of bits and pieces trading hands and across all different sort of strata of the classic world, and especially when you said about the Subaru doing really good numbers, it is definitely that generation of cars that's coming to the fore now, those sort of modern classics, the noughties, 90s ones. People of my generation, a little bit older, that are buying the cars from their childhood. It'll be the people that are buying cars in this. We often talk about the video game generation, people buying from the Gran Turismos. When it comes to things like Race Retro, you're buying more from the Colin McRae Rally series, the Dirt series, things like that, where you're getting your rally-inspired cars. That's where your Subarus, your Evos come into it. And it's, again, there was a great spread of ages at the show as well. This is one of the really positive things which I love about going to shows, is the younger faces that I'm starting to see more and more at these events. And that was why I was excited to sort of sneak back on the Saturday, because obviously younger people aren't going to be working on the Saturday, more likely to come along, and a fantastic turnout on the Saturday as well, of a huge array of faces from sort of children, literally sort of 6, 7, sort of dragging around excited by these classic cars, as well as people that will have remembered them growing up and seeing them on TV, on rally stages, on rallycross. So it is, I think, Race Retro has this sort of unique selling point of the live stage, and it utilises it to its absolute best with a great array of cars on it. It had everything from sort of 1960s Minis and Mark 1 Escorts all the way through to more modern stuff, and also current grassroots rally cars as well, like early getting your foot in the door for rallying stuff, things like Skoda Citigos, weirdly enough, and MG3s, so sort of modern hatchbacks that have been stripped out and lightly rally prepped, is encouraging this next generation into the world of motorsport. But also, as you get into motorsport, you find the classic motorsports, you find classic sort of ways into doing that sort of thing, and again, it supports it. So it's sort of rising tide lifts all boats is sort of one of the great parts of it.
What was the spectator views like for the rally stage? Is it one of those ones where everyone could get a good view from
there is
people wanting to go?
A lot of good viewing opportunities for it. You pretty much, you stand inside sort of the large part of it. It forms essentially a giant C shape, the rally stage.
Okay.
And you sort of get a full sort of semicircle view. You can see the cars sort of come through, do a couple of hairpins, disappear around the back section. They come up, and there is literally a square section where it's essentially 3 90-degree right-handers that the cars will slither around, and they are sort of one hay bale away from the public. So you see the action up close. You see the guys in the Quattro S1s, the 6R4s, really having to sort of brake, tip it in, get on the throttle, get the car rotated, and slither about on sort of skittering gravel and mud everywhere. So you're close.
Slightly closer than like Festival of Speed, then.
Yes, closer.
Yeah, and they don't muck about, do they? The people taking part, they do get their Opel Mantas and their Escort Mark 2s properly sideways. That's what I love about that Race Retro.
And is it timed as well?
I think they are running times on it. I didn't keep an eye on any timing boards or sort of checks.
More just for fun.
I think there's more for bragging rights amongst the drivers more than any sort of level of competition. I think the drivers are out there enjoying showing off their cars, and it rained a bit on the Friday, it rained a bit overnight into the Saturday. So to start with, the tarmac course was quite wet and slick, and then obviously as it dried out, the problem was by that point you're dragging mud from the off-road sections into it, so it retained this level of slipperiness, which meant that you got great shots of your Escorts and things sort of getting properly sideways. A 308 GTB was on the course. There was an that was, you knew when that was
expecting to see one of those.
They did rally a little bit through period, and this one sort of bright yellow car and absolutely wailing as it goes round the sort of square section. There was also a brilliant recent, I think it's a Range Rover Evoque body shell that's dropped on like a pro rally sort of setup that was properly on it coming through there. It was essentially the course car, so it would go out and do the sweeps at the end of all the heats, and they were not hanging about going through there. This car was leaning all over the place and sort of 4 wheels lighting up coming out of every turn.
I hate to ask, did anyone lose it, or was everyone fairly controlled?
There were a couple of people that clipped bales, a couple of people that
no
overstepped on the
damage
throttle.
really.
There was one car that may have shattered a wheel and suspension where it clipped one of the curbs, because obviously this is done on sort of like the sort of paved tarmac bits around Stoneleigh Park. So there are standard sized curbstones at points, and there was someone that may have overstepped it through one of the corners, clattered, I think it was I can't remember if it was a BMW or a Lancer that did it, but essentially shattered a wheel, and that took with it some of the rear suspension. And there are a couple of people that sort of dinged up a bit of bodywork, but that goes to show they're not hanging about when it comes to
Goes to the territory, doesn't it?
It's rally drivers. Rally drivers be rally drivers, and they'll try and get it sideways at every opportunity. So it was a joy to see. And again, I love the classic events because I get a chance to catch up with friends, go speak to sort of familiar faces. And yeah, this is sort of a really nice sort of early springtime sort of enjoyment.
It's quite a good event for meeting people as well, for that first time as well, for anyone wanting to go another year.
Yeah, if it's a lot more, I don't want to say quieter in a bad way than things like the NEC, but it's a lot more laid back. So if you are looking to sort of see clubs or get into racing, it's because it is that bit more laid back, a bit more focused around one part of the hobby. You can get those conversations going, you can meet up with people. I met up with a bunch of different friends there across the 2 days while I was doing my work, and you can sort of sit back and find some space and have that conversation as well. So it's, again, that nice social aspect of the classic car world.
Yeah, I was going to say some superb stuff, and make sure you don't miss out on today's Classic Car Weekly for the stories behind some of the cars that are taking part in Race Retro last weekend.
Yeah, there's obviously coverage on pages 4 and 5. There's also a few additional pictures up on the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I did cobble together a brief video that's out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all that. So if you want to go see some of the rallying action and a few sort of behind the scenes bits, go give that a check out. I'll probably pop a link somewhere on the video, but all worth checking out. Meanwhile, we'll dive into our news coverage, or a different page of our news coverage rather, and the lead story, which is a glut of sporty classics that have emerged from a barn find collection and are heading across the auction block, David.
Yeah, this is a fabulous find. So this is go online, have a look at Bonham's Cars Online. So this is the timed online branch of Bonham's, and they have picked up a collection of 19 cars, which all come from the same place as a restoration business that was based in Romania, whose owner has since passed away. They're all now currently in storage in the Netherlands, but most of these cars have UK title. They're all unrestored, pretty much complete. Lots of them come with spares, and they go from a 1908 Pontiac right through to a 1970 Marcos GT. This is a fabulous find. There's BMWs, there's Aston Martins, there's an AC, there's Allards, all sorts of different cars, all crying out for someone to save them. And the great thing with all of these cars as well is they're all no reserve. So as Bonham's pointing out to me, there's a really good opportunity if you're looking to save a car, you're looking for a spring project, maybe something you could take along. You could take it to the Resto Show, restore it, and then take it to the Classic Auto Show later in the year. This is a really good opportunity to save, particularly 50s and 60s sports cars.
Definitely, yeah. I love the look of the 1962 Amphicar 770. I saw one of those in Villa d'Este, and it was coming along the Lake Como, and ever since I saw that, I've always wanted that style of well, the great
thing is, because these cars are obviously based in the Netherlands, obviously there is some water between us and Holland. You could buy that one,
sail it back to the
UK, fix it up, and then drive it back here. You don't even need to pay for the Eurotunnel.
I love that. It's one of the cars. I mean, it's worth saying that some of the cars there are some kind of cars that probably aren't drivable. You couldn't drive away in this collection.
I know none of them are runners at this stage, but
but the Amphi car looks like it's in fairly good nick. Like it wouldn't take too much. But it goes all the way from like a 1908 Pontiac buggy, which is oddly enough estimated at the lower end of some of this.
On one of only four believed survivors as well.
Oh, really? Wow, yeah. That's amazing. So
fabulously rare.
It must be one of Pontiac's earliest vehicles, I would assume. But certainly a brilliant car. Is that
it's not eligible for London right now. No, the question you're about to ask.
Yeah.
That's 1905.
A little bit late for the London to Brighton, but I can guarantee if you bought that and did it up, with the exception of the London to Brighton, you would almost certainly be the oldest car at pretty much any classic show in this country.
Yeah, Veteran Car Club would be happy to support you if you were to buy it and enjoy it. I think there are some absolutely fantastic.
What would you go for, Jesse, if you were going to choose something? And you too, David. What would you choose?
I'm torn. I was originally looking at one of the Aston Martin DB2s because I do find them absolutely fantastic, and they are the first Aston Martin that James Bond ever drives in the books. I was also particularly taken by the Delahaye because I do like my weird American stuff, but I think for sort of closest to running driving-iness, or one of the Jaguar XK150s or 140s, though I do quite like you said, the Amphi car. I think there'd be quite a bit of fun to be had in pretending to be President Johnson, who used to have one. And I don't know if you've heard the story, one of his favourite tricks was driving around, I think it was White House Gardens, where they have a lake and there's a gentle slope that comes down to it. So he was sort of taking his friends out in his funny little looking sports car, and he'd drive down the slope towards the lakes, feign brake failure, and simply drive straight into the lake. And
I think I've seen that. Yeah, that's funny.
It's such a great bit. And they just sort of used to tease like staffers and any guests that were coming, and then he'd simply sort of putter about, drive to an outslope, and off he'd go again. But yeah, I think for me, something's calling me about that XK150.
The 150S.
The 150S just looks good.
The thing with the XK150 as well is you see what mint fully restored cars go for. It's six figures now for really nice ones. That potentially, if you were accused about it and managed to restore it without breaking the bank, that is a very, very desirable car for, comparatively speaking, not a huge amount of money.
Current bid on it, 25,250 euros, which is way too rich for my blood, but it's certainly in the round of affordable if you're looking to do some sort of restoration. And again, there's so much support for classic Jaguars these days, getting engines built for them, getting interior parts, bodywork done. It's a very reasonable thing to get sorted.
Yeah, and they're more roomier than the XK120s and XK140s as well.
Yeah, I think I've driven an XK150, which was it wasn't the S, but it was an XK150 that had been upgraded to S specification.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I remember driving it, that and an XK120, and it's amazing because obviously people tend to think of the XK150 as being the less desirable model, but actually in terms of the drivability, it was chalk and cheese. It was I think the XK120 is a harder, it would be it's a much prettier car. But I think if you were actually going to live with a Jaguar XK, you'd go with a 150 every day of the week.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting you say that, because I spoke to someone recently who owns all three, a 120, 140 and a 150. And he loves the 150 because his wife loves it as much as he does, and she can fit her bags in the back. It makes for a more fun trip for the two of them if they can get to places like Goodwood in the 150, and they could take their belongings, and it's the best of both worlds. And he loves the drive. He says he drives that more because of how fun it drives. Not taking anything away from the original 120, but for his own personal.
This was the chap at our Christmas shoot, wasn't it?
That's the chap.
Yes.
He's done Le Mans Classic with it as well, which
it's the perfect car for doing Le Mans Classic, isn't it? That's
if you've got a car that's that tractable, I think it's certainly a choice. What are you going to go for then from that?
For me, it would have to be the Marcos. It's it's the cheap. All of them are no reserve, but they've all been given pre-sale estimates by Bonhams, and they reckon it's probably going to be the cheapest. That one. It's again a fantastically rare car. It looks fabulous. I don't think it would cost you, a bazillion pounds to restore it either, and you'd be saving quite a rare bit of British sports car heritage by doing that. There were lots of people driving around in old TVRs and Lotuses from that era, but not so many people driving Marcoses.
That's very true. And saving those is such a big thing, isn't it? And people were going to car shows and noticing that rare car that's good people.
All of the British cars in that collection are all left-hand drive, but I think with the Marcos that actually makes it cooler.
Definitely, yeah.
Makes it that bit rare. It's got the Volvo 1800 engine in it, I think, by the look at this one. it's a pretty sound looking car. And again, I was tempted to say the Marcos because I do again like my British little sports cars, and it's a fun piece of design. Those.
Yeah. I think it'll be a really interesting thing to keep an eye on all of these cars. As at the time of this being recorded, the bids are flurrying in. They are on online on their website until Thursday evening. That's the 27th of February. So some of them end at 6 o'clock at night, some of them end at 9 o'clock. But if you want to save a rare bit of sports car heritage, go online to Bonhams and get your bids in.
Do you know what the bid is for the Marcos at the moment?
Go on.
€1,211.
It's asking you to bid, David. It really is.
What a cheeky bit. We get paid on Friday, so
do,
you never know.
and listeners and readers, if you're interested in these, the website is bonhamscarsonline.com. bonhamscarsonline.com.
Yeah, James, what would you go for? Did you pick
mine,
the Jaguar?
didn't I? I went for the Amphicar.
Oh yeah, that was it.
It's all about that. And like you say, being able to get that back from Holland. I know none of these are going to be drivable away straight away, but that looks like it's in pretty good nick.
Well, I mean, if it's structurally okay, yeah, you buy a set of oars and row it back.
I think they did come with oars, actually, as a standard thing. I think it's one of those things that you have to have a secondary means of propulsion for small boats. Therefore, it had to come with oars to be marine worthy.
What do we think would be a better way of crossing the channel? A non-working Amphicar with oars, or James May's Sailing Herald?
Ooh, I think the Amphicar is at least watertight.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I'd rather try and row across the channel in an Amphicar than try and pilot a sinking Herald across the channel.
That would be a great idea, because James May's Herald is going on show next month at the Grampian Transport Museum. We did a story on it a week or two ago, and wouldn't it be great to get that Amphicar and somehow if you could miraculously get it up and running in time, drive it up to Aberdeen and park it next to James May's Sailing Boat Herald.
I'm glad you said driving the Amphicar up. I thought you were about to suggest that at some point I try and sort of pilot the Herald on water again, because I was like, I might be the sort of flexible staff writer that's pointed at and done anything, but
Well, you could always, if you didn't want to drive it up the A1, you could take the Amphicar and kind of sail it up the North Sea coast. I've seen all those North Sea videos on Instagram. I'm sure it'd be a lovely cruise.
And you do like taking classic cars through water.
Yeah, this is
known
true.
to do this.
If anyone on the team is best poised for an amphibious vehicle, it's me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has anyone turned an MG Midget into an Amphicar yet? Has that happened?
I tried it didn't go well.
Yeah, I get no, but I do think that people have tried it with some weird and wonderful machines.
But that's the thing, like money, no budget, and money, no sort of cap. I think that there is a great series to be made in how many things can you make an MG Midget do? Like, can you make an MG Midget do Peking to Paris? Can you make one do the Le Mans Classic? Can you make one do like top fuel drag racing? Can you make one be amphibious? Like, take one MG and make that one MG Midget do
every aspect.
So you sort of have to, with as little modifications as possible. So as many of those must be done with the original 1275 engine in them for whatever reason. You're running simply PTO off the rear diff to spin a small propeller to try and sort of putt your way across the channel. I think it'd be a great challenge.
Little bit of everything. Yeah, that'd be good. Make a great television show. Maybe
subscribe on YouTube. I'll see if I can find a way of getting you to send us money. And if enough of you send us money, you can watch me drown in the channel in an MG Midget. How's that sound for a project?
Would I be next to you in a dinghy just to drag you in?
Yeah, you can be in the rescue. You can be in the rescue boat with a boat hook just to hoik me and my sort of jeans out of a car. Yeah.
Sorry, listeners, we've gone on a little bit of a tangent, but an exciting tangent.
It's a good tangent. A good podcast involves a good tangent, but that clears up a bit of our news coverage. We'll dive into a show that is yet to come, and this is the Practical Classics Restoration Show at the NEC, which is, I was about to say next month, but if you're listening to this anytime in the next 2 days, this month.
Yeah, so obviously the Restoration Show is back. I'll have to triple check the dates. Do you mind if I triple check the dates very quickly?
The 21st to the 23rd of March.
You can edit that out, can't you?
21st to the 23rd of March.
21st to the 23rd of March. There we go.
We'll leave that all here in front of me.
Yes, there we are. Yeah, I was 99% sure I didn't want to send the good people of YouTube and podcast world to the NEC see on the wrong dates. Yeah, 100%. 21st to 23rd of March. Again, it's going to be packed with the best of Britain's restored cars. We've got the contenders for the Pride of Ownership contest in this week's issue. So there's some fabulous cars.
Brilliant list.
Yeah, I've seen one of them already actually, which is the 1960 Morris Mini Minor owned by Jamie Garrett. Hi, Jamie, if you're listening.
That's the oldest car on the list.
That is the oldest car on the list. I saw it at a coffee and chrome breakfast meet at Bicester Heritage. Would have been last November, December, just before Christmas. And again, that
was October, I think.
It was a later one than that.
So, might have been the November one then.
Yes.
I know the guy you're talking about because I think I follow him on TikTok as well.
Yeah,
so I've definitely
again,
seen it
it's a really nice example. It was one that his grandfather bought back in the 60s. Again, there's a great story behind it. It's been really doted on, this car, but you think about it, that's the standard by which the pride of ownership, those are the kind of cars that are going to be there. There's going to be 20 of them. I know all of them have got, they're all in magnificent condition, and they have been absolutely cherished and doted on by their custodians. And I love that part of the show because there's so much variety, everything from the 60s right through to the noughties and beyond. And with that particular thing, I mean, we don't get to choose the winners. The show organisers don't get to choose the winners. It's you, the public, who get to vote for them. And on the very last day, Ant Hansted of For the Love of Cars and Wheeler Dealers fame will be announcing the winner. So I'm really looking forward to that. There's also going to be lots of restoration tips on stage, and again, when I'm not judging the National Car Club Awards, but get your votes in now, by the way, you'll be able to see all of the various car clubs actually mending and fettling their latest projects. So it's a really good opportunity to pick up top tips and get inspiration for your next project.
It is just an all-round fantastic show. I do really enjoy the Resto Show because of it has that bit of action to it, that additional bit to otherwise what would just be cars parked up. The Classic Motor Show in the November is great fun. It is always top to enjoy. The cars on display are fantastic. This, again, like Race Retro, has that unique selling point of you're seeing this live sort of preservation of skills, and it always really just sort of scratches away at that little bit in the back of my brain that goes, ooh, fiddling with cars, I enjoyed this. Yeah. And it gives you that little bit more to see. But yeah, I think
what I love about the show, though, is that it's you see a journey from people who've bought a car or had a car, restored it, and you just see the sometimes they document the journey of where the restorations come from, and some of the hours and love that's gone into it. And also, you sometimes stumble across the barn finds that have just been plucked out of nowhere, and you think, wow, and they've left the cars as they've come out of that, storage, and so you can't believe it, and you think, and you speak to the current owner who's got a vision to bring it back. Or sometimes people are like, well, I'm going to leave it patina, however you want to pronounce it, and get the engine back to normal, but keep the body as is, so it retains that kind of level of originality, I suppose.
The thing I always find, because when I go around on the show's opening day, taking part in the judging for the National Car Club Awards, and the thing I always find it's always really tricky to judge them because the clubs put so much effort into their restorations, and you see guys like the Jowett Car Club, they have their full-on workshop and they're doing just about everything on their different cars, and you see, I mean, there's the one guy who always stands out to me, at the Resto Show. There's a chap in the Standard Motor Club called Sean, and I remember going along to see a car, and it was a Standard Companion that was an absolute wreck, and he said, "Oh, what are you going to do? Where are you going to?" And he said, "I'm going to restore it." And said, "How long is that going to take?" And he says, "It's going to be here at the Classic Motor Show in November." And I was like, "You're not, surely." And sure enough, the following November, 6 months later, that car was there and it was gleaming. It was absolutely stunning. He worked miracles on that car, and that it's those really inspiring stories of getting classics, wonderful pieces of our motoring heritage, saving them and getting them on show and getting future generations of enthusiasts to enjoy them. That's what I love about it.
That is very inspiring. And actually, that's one thing you'll probably notice from the Pride of Ownership is some of the journeys that people have taken to get their cars to this almost, I'd say, concourse level quality kind of cars on there. But we've got a nice list on there. What would you guys pick as your
from the
Pride of ownership car.
Oh, from the pride of ownership. Ooh. Yeah. What was my winner?
I'll jump in and help you guys out here. So there's quite a collection, as a variety of cars, as you've both mentioned, dating from a 1960 Morris Mini, which David's already pinpointed, to a 2010, the most modern is 2010 Ford Focus RS. For me, I've always loved the Datsun 260s, and there's a 1976 Datsun 260 there. However, until I saw the 1984 Lotus Esprit Turbo, which, I'm sorry, I might have just nicked that off of Jesse, but with only 3,000 miles being covered in the last 40 years, it almost makes it a time warp kind of Lotus Esprit. And I remember playing like Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge on my cousin's Commodore Amiga, and it was the closest I've ever driven to a Lotus Esprit. And to find a car like that that's only covered that many miles, I can't wait to see it. But I'll finish off by saying the 1998 Peugeot 106 GTI is something that I might kind of look at and think, right, now I want to go down the road and see if I can buy a 106 GTI.
106 GTIs, they're fast becoming hot property. I think the 205s have all been snatched up, and the 106 is really getting
that's heading the same way now, isn't it?
And they are very popular cars at the moment, and for good reason. I think also it's my generation that's snapping them up. The 1998 sort of later 90s ones were just about on the streets when we were sort of growing up. They were sort of very much the sort of fun little sort of nippy cars you spotted whipping around, and we sort of grew up thinking, oh, it'd be fun to have one of them one day. That's starting to become like my generation's sort of
very much
classic. And I think I vaguely recognise the name Nathan Mills, possibly from a bunch of sort of young owners clubs. So I'm fairly certain he is about my age as well. So I think it's great that we've got what I think, certainly from knowing Jamie Garrett as well, we've got some young names popping up in this pride of ownership as well. So again, it's a good measure of the health of the classic car world. I'm, however, gonna have to pick.
Was it gonna be the Lotus Esprit Turbo?
I did spot the Lotus Esprit Turbo because I've driven one and I absolutely love them. But I think I'm going to go for the Mercedes 280 SL because it's a rally special as well. And you know me, I love a rally car, and I do think the 280 SL was a bit of an odd choice to take rallying, but they do look fantastic, fully rally prepped. Safari spec ones look superb with the black bonnet.
What a great last name as well, owned by Nicky Dino. And just think, oh great,
I'm going to have to go and find Nicky at the show. Perhaps on the Thursday when they do set up, I'm going to have to go and find out more about this car.
I wonder if they own a Ferrari as well. If they did, it'd be perfect. But yeah, great last name.
David, your early contender from the pride of ownership.
I think the one I'm going to be keeping an eye out for on the display is the 1989 Nissan Micra. And
I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, well, the thing that intrigues me with that is so there's an Austin Allegro that's taking part in the event, and those for a long time are obviously the common joke was they was the worst car. It was one of the worst cars on Britain's roads, and we know for a fact that those obviously they're now revered as classic cars, and a lot of people have already put a lot of time and love into restoring Allegros. Nissan Micras, I think, obviously that generation, which is the K10 generation. I remember it wasn't that long ago somebody offered me one for 50 quid, and which kind of just shows you that they're still actually not that long out of their banger phase, but they're now very much being snapped up by people who see them as cars that they can take along to events like Festival of the Exception. They can take them along to coffee meets, that sort of thing. And I'd be really intrigued to see how meticulously restored a car that actually not that long ago was seen as a bit throwaway, just to see how much love has been put into that car.
Well, they were back in the early 90s, they were considered by many to be the best first car you could buy. They got so many so many positive reviews for, and they're still being driven around now. Even to this day, you see one, and they still look fairly normal on today's road. So, yeah. But I never, as you just said, I've not seen one everyone I've seen looks like it's in well-used condition, to put it very politely. So to see one in top nick will be very, very...
There's one that I occasionally see when I'm up in Lancashire, which is... and again, every example of a K10 Micro, they seem to be driven by people who aren't using them as classic cars. They just appear to be people who bought them when they were new and forgot to sell them.
Yeah. It says a lot about their longevity.
They're not being used as classic cars. They're being used as like delivery driver cars. That's, I think, sort of what some of them happened into as well. Or something they went through that phase. I think the K11 and
the K11's still in that state.
Yeah, reliability's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's because they just don't die. Annoyingly, the engine in them does also fit in the MG
I was about
Midget.
to say that because you were looking for the K1 and one.
Every now and then, online auction sites pop up with the option to buy the engine from those cars, like the 13 CGE, because it bolts up to the engine mounts and just takes an adapter plate and it'll bolt onto the gearbox that's in there. You stick bike carbs on it, you get the throttle noise
They
back.
still don't float, though.
It won't float. It won't float, but it's 100 horsepower and stock internals. I'm like, that's like a 30% increase over what it would be.
That'd be great on the way to Le Mans.
Yeah, that would fly down to Le Mans. But yes, we've got plenty to look at. And again, the barn find collection is interesting. I know that it's a great way of captivating younger audience. There's a lass that's currently restoring one of the barn finds from last year's event, Bring Back Barney. It was the very, very grotty looking.
That was the Morris Minor, wasn't it? Yes. We're interested to see how it's getting on.
I know that she's still sort of soldiering away on that one. That's proved to be a long build, but certainly an interesting one to keep an eye on. So yeah, there's plenty to look forward to at the Restoration Show later next month, this month, depending on when you listen to this.
Before we move on from the PC Resto Show, the National Car Club Awards. What if people wanted to vote, David, for the National Car Club Awards? What could they do?
Please do. Yeah,
where would they go? How would they do it?
nationalcarclubawards.com is where you need to go. With the readers of Classic Car Weekly, and by extension, everyone listening to this, are invited to vote for their car club hero of the year. This is someone who has gone the extra mile. If you are a member of a car club and you know someone who is an absolute, who's done sterling service in the field of keeping classics on the road and organising events to support them, get your entry in, and you never know, you might see them in a few weeks' time on stage at the Resto Show, having their moment under the glittering lights of the NEC.
Yeah, if you're on YouTube or the episode, I'll get the link for that in the description as well, so you don't miss out. Nice and easy to find. We've been talking for over 40 minutes or thereabouts now, for the various tangents woven in between. We've still got an issue to put together ahead of press day, so we'll shuttle back off to our desks and leave you to enjoy this week's issue of Classic Car Weekly, available in all good stockists and some bad ones. We'll be back next week. I can't even remember what we've got coming out next week. We've got the story of my MG and how it broke again in next week's issue, haven't we? Which is going to be quite good fun. We've also got...
We say goodbye to the 406 Coupe.
We do.
It's goodbye. It had one last hurrah at the Festival of the Unexceptional, where, I'll tell you, it couldn't have had a lovelier backdrop, not just because of the lovely house and grounds, but the fantastic array of cars there.
It's a nice little piece, actually. It comes together well. We've also got a buying guide for the BMW Isetta, 25 ways to ensure your classic is spring ready, as obviously spring is fast approaching, and we look ahead to the London to Brighton Classic Car Run, the summer run that you can take part in, and I think tickets and bookings for that have opened or are about to open, so get on that one. It's a fantastic day out. There's usually a fight in the office to get a chance to go on it, so plenty to look forward to in next week's issue, which we ought to go and start putting together.
All you need to do now is make it.
Yes, yeah, we've got to go and do that.
We seem to get it done.
Yes. Every Wednesday it appears on a shop shelf, so we're doing something right.
I feel like press day is sometimes like Indiana Jones in his hat, grabbing it at the last minute and sending it to the printers.
Snatching it from the Temple of Doom. James, David, thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, it has been.
And we will be back next week with another edition of the Classic Car Weekly podcast. Thank you.